It is your Classic Metal Show right here on theclassicmetalshow.com. That is brand new stuff from Prong. The tune is called Cut and Dry. And on the line right now is a guy whose answers are always cut and dry. It's the one, the only leader of Prong. It's Tommy Victor. Tommy, how are you, man?
I'm good, Chris. How you doing today?
Excellent, man. Tommy, I got to tell you, the record, No Absolutes, is it No Absolutes or 10 No Absolutes or X No Absolutes?
Yeah, X10, yeah, Roman numeral 10, X No Absolutes.
Okay. Well, the record itself, man, I got to tell you, as a big Prong fan that's pretty much been with you all the way since Force Fed, I can't believe that you guys have not only come back from being broken up, but just kind of taken it that much heavier as it is today. This has got to be the heaviest record from you guys, no?
I think the sound quality of it's pretty heavy. It's pretty pummeling, and that needed to be done. And but there's some diversions on the record too.
Sure.
You know, we added a couple of different elements in there, which I sort of have to do in order to keep it a little bit interesting. But I think it sounds pretty pummeling.
Absolutely, man. And for you especially, I mean, you've always let Prong, you've never let Prong be kind of a formula band, you know, you've always taken risks. You know, I'll go to like Rude Awakening, that was so very industrial, and, you know, you've had so many different twists and turns throughout the catalog, you know, and now it just seems like this era, this from 2012-ish on, it really seems like you've gone a little more raw, but at the same time, you're still weaving in and out. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, when you have a large catalog of records to refer to, you know, looking back and seeing some mistakes that you've made, like you mentioned, Rude Awakening, you know, when you have a time to make amends to those records or something. I mean, we have the fans of that record, and now we're on a smaller label. There's more control over what's going on. I mean, too, we're on a major label, and there's a lot of people involved, and their input, and in a too many chiefs scenario. Mm-hmm. So I mean, it's interesting making records later in your career. It's you take a different approach, and you have to have your standard formula, and then you have new things that you want to throw in there. But I think I've become more attuned to what Prong is as I go on. I mean, it's weird, you know. Like I think there's been a lot of on-the-job training with this whole thing with me. I mean, I still really don't know the hell what I'm doing anyhow. But it's like, it's just out of experience. You know, more things are dialed in, and you try to throw different approaches into it too. So again, having some older records to look back upon definitely helps.
Sure. Now you mentioned about how everything evolves, and one thing is no secret. There's been about 342,000 members of Prong at this point. Is that a big part of how it evolves? It evolves as you change people that you work with?
Yeah, I think that has something to do with it. Especially with producers and co-songwriters. Yeah, I mean, that's just natural. That's just going to happen. We've had a steady lineup now for 4 years, sure, and that has definitely helped. So it's good to have guys that you can trust around you. And I really like everyone that's involved, including management and, Chris Collier, who co-produced the record with me, and then, Art Cruz and Jason Christopher. So, yeah, I mean, you're only as good as your team, man. I mean, it's like it's really important to have good guys around you, and I need people to direct me too. Like I don't, like I said, a lot of times I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I'm just grasping for straws sometimes.
Sure. Now, Tommy, the record is called No Absolutes, and I could guess what that means, but it's probably better if I just ask you what that is in reference to.
Well, pretty much everything. I mean, I think there's a lot of insecurity in the world and in our personal lives, and but there's a positive message to it too. It's like, stay in the moment and, live for today, and, stop worrying about the past or the future so much. And, it's like, again, like the album artwork, if you want to check it out online on Facebook or prongmusic.com. I mean, it came out great. It's like, it just shows, like a little bit of singularity, existentialism, a little bit of political commentary and in one big package. And we're really happy about the way the whole thing, having an album title really means a lot. It's like it's hard to come across that involvement in the packaging. And it's really about insecurities and people, have identity crises too. Like, I think people are trying to grasp for some kind of, control over everything. And, you don't have control. Who knows what's going to happen? And you don't really have that much control over your destiny as much as we like to think. I mean, humans live in this delusion of that.
Sure. Now, when you were writing this record, I'm going to assume, since you've been out on and off with Danzig and doing the different things that you do, that you don't always have time anymore to just sit down and write. That you kind of have ideas here and there, and you probably record them, on a phone or something, and then go back and clear it up. How. That's obviously very different than, in 1989 or 92 or whatever. How has your songwriting changed, and are you happy that it is the way it is, or do you miss the old days?
No, I'm happy the way it is because with digital technology, like you're implying, it's helped a lot. I mean, we'd have to rattle through a bunch of riffs and try to decide what's appropriate back in the day, and that would take a lot of time. Mm-hmm. So now we bypass a lot of that, and we can focus on trying to dial in some of the goals that we wanted to do on the record, which is combining like an album rock format, since it's being pressed on vinyl, and vinyl's obviously made a resurgence. Sure. and then having the whole Spotify and streaming mentality where people are only going to give you 20 seconds. So how do you combine both those into, providing, a decent product in the end? And, having, the access to new tools really helps a lot of ways.
Sure. What is your impression of like Spotify, Pandora, et cetera? It seems like all musicians seem to take a hard line either way, that it's either the great evil or it is, the great savior that lets bands continue. Where do you fall?
I don't have a heavy sentiment about the whole thing. I mean, really adapting to the times is really the reality of the situation. So the whole thing has to keep moving in the present, and staying up with the times is really important. I mean, I can't really control what's going on out there. So I have to make cheaper records at a faster rate and produce more singles, and that's again back to what I was saying. Some of the goals of the record is having a collection of singles that can make an album format, and where people can pick out certain songs, and they're all going to be strong. And then when the record becomes sequenced and it's on double vinyl like we have, where you could end up besides, and I mentioned in an earlier interview, like, we're products of the 70s, and, like the way Zeppelin would sequence a record and how they would flow and how great they were.
Sure.
And, like the Doors too, where, you'd have these ebbs and flows of a record. And now we're doubly challenged now, where we have to think of that and have the singles too. And we're going to continue to put singles out, and that's what's happening right now. And what are you going to do about it, really?
Sure.
It's unfortunate that people aren't actually purchasing these items, but what are you going to do? It's like that's the reality of it.
Right. It's one of those things, we talk about it a lot on the show. It's the way it is today, and especially the younger kids, not the older people that are downloading music or whatever, but the 20s, the 15 to 25-year-old kids, they just are, they look at you almost cluelessly when you tell them about how you used to grab a record and read everything that was, in the liner notes and memorize every word of it and spend 6 months listening to one record before you moved on. It's almost sad that they don't get that experience, because at least in my opinion, they don't actually grow with the bands, where we all, what like you were saying, the Doors or Zepp or whatever, we grew with Led Zeppelin. Zeppelin. We grew with the Doors. We grew with Metallica or whomever. And these kids, they really don't have that this day, don't you think?
Oh, tell me about it. I mean, I've been discussing this a lot recently, and it's the mystique of it has changed a lot. I mean, I had pictures of Sabbath, like we really didn't know what they really looked like, or we'd just stare at the gatefold of Paranoid, like these guys are so cool, and then every once in a while there'd be an article in Cream or Circus back then, and we'd take those pictures and we just have them on our walls, and it was like that whole era is gone. Sure. Now you have these faceless producer DJs, and that's what a lot of the kids are into. It's like, right. No one like I have a daughter and I'll mimic her voice. It's like, no one cares what these, we don't even know who they are. It's like, right. They're just like these producer dudes, that do DJ compilation records. So anyway, well, back to rock music. Yeah, no, but you know what? I mean, with this resurgence of vinyl, I think people will be able to open it up, and they're going to read the lyrics, and they're legible, and they'll sit with it now. I think that there's a possibility of this really taking off, I think. And I know this is another generation that are going to really be into this whole format of going back to vinyl again. Sure.
Now, listening to the new record, Tommy, I'm going to point to you specifically in the guitar playing. You just, I don't even know how to put it. I don't want to say that you sound more aggressive, because that almost makes it sound like the other stuff wasn't. But there's like something to what you're playing now that's just a little bit different. I'll take a song like In Spite of Hindrances as a prime example. That it's almost like a speed metal riff or something that you're playing. It's just a different thing than has commonly, at least in my head, been associated with Prong. Is there something different, or is it just you growing as a player?
Well, you mentioned having like the other members around, like, Art Cruz is an unbelievably proficient drummer, okay, too. So, sometimes you're around guys that you're like, well, you can't do this because this guy's in the band or whatever, I mean, not to take away from anybody else that's been in the group, but, I've liked to explore a couple of like more challenging riffs here and there, and, just go for it more, it's like, why not, so with, that's fun when you could actually come up with stuff that's like, a little bit more bombastic, and that's where I'm at right now. I mean, like, we did, we did what I used to call the techno metal riffs, which is these big plotting things, and there's some of that element still in there, but it's time to combine. I'm throwing everything in a mixed bag more these days, and we've always done that, but the riffs are important, but the vocals are important. Everything is up there with in the priority list, but I mean, I appreciate your comment, and I think that, again, like going back to technology too, is we know how to accomplish some of the sounds now a lot better, and it's easy to go in there and churn these records out now, compared to years ago. You'd be in there for 5 days trying to get a guitar sound, and now it's a lot easier.
Sure. Now, no secret, you've spent a lot of time in the last decade with Danzig, and you played a million shows with them at this point and whatnot. And yet it does, of all the things where we're talking about all the different influences with Prong, it doesn't seem like any of that has ever crept into the music that you're doing. Is that a conscious thing, or is it just that's just not how you can you turn it on and off?
Yeah, I turn it on and off. It's a separate entity completely. I mean, that's Glenn's deal, and I like to participate in making Glenn's goals come true, or whatever he wants to do. But I could say I'm pretty much under the dictation of what he wants, and like we're friends, so I don't mind making that happen. So that's really with that. It's a whole other deal, though.
Sure.
I enjoy I respect Glenn a lot, and like what he's done, and I like a lot of his views, like on a lot of things. Is I couldn't do that, It's like it's not my deal. I don't think along those terms in a lot of ways, but
Okay.
I appreciate some of his mentality, as outrageous as they are at times.
Sure. Now, let me ask you something that has nothing to do with Prong or with anything other than I know you have history here. I'm curious if you saw and what you thought of the CBGBs movie.
Oh, it was atrocious. It's so far from the truth, and just embarrassing. It really had nothing to do with what was going on, and the casting was unbelievably bad, and it's mind blowing how poorly done that was. It's crazy.
Yeah,
it's like I heard. I mean, when you get stuff into Hollywood and into the whole scene out here, that's what happens. It's like the truth no longer is the truth, and no one cares really. It's ridiculous.
Sure, and it's fun. You and I had done an interview, I don't know, probably 7, 8, 9 years ago, and we talked at length about CBGBs. And and for people that don't know, you were heavily involved with CBGBs for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm never, we laughed too. I was hanging out with an old girlfriend of mine that came into town. And she was from back in the day when we were talking that you can't really describe to people what it was like back then. I mean,
Sure.
That whole neighborhood was all desolate. I mean, it was like junkies, bums, artists, and off the boat ethnic people that were like angry, and it was just like this crazy scene down there, and like it doesn't exist anymore, and no one cares if it did exist. And that to me, if they would have somehow got into what it was like back then, it would have been more appropriate. But the pseudo drama that went down in that, and historically it was all wrong. And I used to hang out there during that period. I wasn't working there. I mean, Maybe they could make amends and do like an 80s CBs like hardcore movie that could somehow show what it was like down there. But they would consult the wrong people. I mean, It's like a lot of people have shown up trying to be like aficionados on what it was like back then, and they're like second generation people, and it's really so far from the truth. And you know what? In the end, no one really cares, and that's the. I don't even think that's sad. I just think that's what's real. I mean, we always thought that we were somehow gonna be crowned these pioneers from all the people from back in the day, and it turns out like we're cast-offs from being any kind of contributors to these documentaries and writings, and other people have taken on the role as journalistic authorities on the whole thing.
Sure. Well, Tommy, what does 2016 hold for you and for Prong?
We got a lot of shows coming up. I mean, we start out in March in Europe, come right back here, do a really long 2-month North American run, then go back to Europe, and then we're trying to, which is a long tour in Europe after that, and then who knows after that? I mean, probably doing more American shows or going to other territories. So there's a lot of work on the road, and we'll be continually putting out singles for this thing. I mean, to me that's like the new wave of you make an album. It's almost reverting back to the 60s, where the 60s were almost compilations of singles.
Sure.
So that's sort of the identity we went in with No Absolutes, was having all the songs are standalone songs but can fit into an album format. So we'll have these digitally available singles, and some of them will be pressed onto 45s, and we'll have like 5 of them by the time the 2016's up.
Very cool, man. Well, Tommy, before I let you go, why don't you give out the plugs one more time where everybody can go to find out everything going on with you and Prong and tour dates and all that stuff.
www.prongmusic.com, and there's a link there for tour dates, and you can buy tickets online directly from there as well. Facebook page has all the information of all the formats that this record's out on, which is, Google Play, iTunes, the Amazon link for the vinyl, et cetera. If you really search hard in stores, it will be in some selected Best Buys and then other stores, et cetera. And then if you really want to cheat, it'll be on Spotify and after the release date, and check it out. The first singles, Ultimate Authority, is been on Spotify, and then Cut and Dry, the one you played, is the new single that is going to be coming out shortly. So yeah, www.prongmusic.com, and then Twitter, Prong Music, and Instagram, Prong the Band. So you can see beautiful pictures of me holding guitars, and Jason and Art doing crazy things.
Awesome, man. Well, Tommy, as a tradition on the show, we always let the artist pick a closing track from the new record and tell us a story about it. So what should we wrap this up with?
Let's play Do Nothing. After doing a cover of Cortez the Killer by Neil Young on the previous covers record, Songs from the Black Hole, I realized, hey, maybe I could start singing a song. And so here's Prong's closest thing to a ballad that we've ever done. So Do Nothing. It was done pretty fast, too. It was written in probably 5 minutes.
Nice. Perfect. Well, let's check it out right now. This is Do Nothing. It's Prong right here on your Classic Metal Show.